I'll tell you something. A lot of us have lost someone in some sort of traffic incident, and I talked to somebody at the SEC during SEC media days, and they said, if you went through and looked at the arrest records in or traffic records of arrest in Knoxville or not Athens, in Columbia or Baton Rouge, you would find that there are as many players and staffers involved with traffic incidents as other places like Athens, Georgia. But I'm having a lot of trouble believing that, and this person may have had a bit of a, I don't know, agenda to drive in there. So you have another Georgia staffer arrested. That culture does not seem to be going well at all. And then we're going to talk about some Peyton Manning here in a second. But let me start with the Georgia staffer, Jarvis Jones, arrested. What can you tell us about that arrest? As for Kirby Smart, he put the labor in a Labor Day weekend because it was something else that Kirby Smart had to worry about and work upon.
Yeah, so Jarvis Jones is Georgia's player connection coordinator. Never heard of that title in my life. It seems like a ceremonial job they gave him since he played at Georgia back in the 2010s.
Okay, but you know what that is, though? That sounds to me like that's the kind of molding of guys. They called it the VFL coordinator, which is the last guy that should be getting in trouble.
It's the last guy that should be getting in trouble.
Yes, like a team chaplain. Like if your team chaplain gets arrested for prostitution, you're like, oh, that's not good. All right.
Or if you're a church pastor, which I've covered a lot of those scandals in my life.
Yes. I watched the Jerry Falwell documentary recently, but go ahead. So this guy gets arrested for what?
So he was arrested on charges of reckless driving and speeding less than 24 hours before their season opener, released on $2,400 bond. Smart said there will be internal discipline. Although I'm with Dave, I don't know how you can do internal discipline for somebody whose whole responsibility is helping players with character development. I mean, who's going to take him seriously now? And for those who don't remember, Jarvis Jones played 4 years in the NFL with the Steelers. He was a two-time All-American. He was actually one of the players that transferred from USC after the whole Lane Kiffin probation news hit. He transferred to Georgia the same year Malik Jackson transferred to Tennessee. That happened. And so, yeah, he's an outside linebacker, former outside linebacker. It's just one of many situations with Georgia where players are getting in trouble, particularly with traffic incidents. It sounds like it was on a Friday night. So speeding, misdemeanor charges of reckless driving and speeding maximum limits. Okay,
so here's my issue with this whole thing is this is something very serious. This isn't, yes, and you're right, Robert, he should be fired immediately. With the issues they've had, sorry, Jarvis, it's not your fault they've had issues before you, but if there hasn't been a clear declaration of this will not be allowed any longer, then this is it, fire Jarvis Jones. And then the rest of the players should take note. But listen, when Alabama built what they built, they had a lot of five-star guys with a lot of confidence, borderline cockiness. And they avoided these issues for the most part. I'm sure they had issues where players were suspended and all that. But when you get a bunch of those guys in the locker room, they're thinking about the NFL, and you don't have them in the same culture in terms of off the field, it will erode at your success eventually. It happened at Tennessee and Philip Fulmer's later years. So how big of an issue is this? Somebody at the SEC tried to tell me it's not that big of an issue. I think this is a monster issue. I think the fact that you would have, this is the third time we've had this conversation in the offseason, that how could you go out and do this after the history they've had? And we could almost replay the last guy that got arrested, be it a player or a staffer. So there's been three, like since February or March, and you already had the backdrop of this is an issue. So Dawgs too proud, Robert, maybe. Do you think you can get away with anything? This is not smoking weed in your dorm room. this is a different level. This is the level I think of, domestic violence, or when you get into extreme speeding or you get to drunken driving, you could hurt somebody else. Okay, and I'm a guy who has 2 kids on college campuses. Okay, that should be a safe place, and I don't think Georgia's football program is making it a safe place. I think this is a big, big time problem. And if I'm Greg Sankey, I'm getting involved behind the scenes. But if it happens again, I'm getting involved and out in front of it publicly. This is bad, and it's not being addressed. Do it once, twice, even 3 times, because that's been the habit of, hey, what do you do on a Friday night? We go out and drag race, which I'm told is big in the Athens and northwest Atlanta area, northeast Atlanta area. But no, this is continuing to happen. They're not listening to him. It's falling on deaf ears. That is the issue, Caleb.
Yes, and it's, you told me about this. I knew about the discipline issues in Tennessee in the early 2000s, but one thing you brought up that I never thought about was, once you have them, you can't get it back. You can't get the program back. And I start to wonder because you see with Urban, one of the reasons Alabama has none, Nick Saban has so much credibility. Players go with the understanding that this is Nick Saban's program, period, end of story. You can't be bigger than the program. I kind of equate it to the NBA, for instance, when the Bulls signed Dennis Rodman. Well, Dennis Rodman wasn't going to be able to be a cancer with the Bulls because he already knew he was going to a team that was led by Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. Like, that's their team, and you're welcome to be and lucky to be a part of it. I think that's why I've always said that head cases at wide receiver are best if they sign with quarterbacks like Peyton Manning or Tom Brady, because Tom Brady or Peyton Manning will keep them in line. Well, Kirby Smart, you would think, has that credibility, but now I'm thinking in my head, what if he got to where he is by ignoring these issues for so long, and we just don't know about them until now? Now they're getting exposed.
Right, because more people are going to cover it. Elias says Smart is setting himself up for a massive narrative shift if he starts losing some games. Let me offer this too. What I think a lot of people think that Georgia is just going to take over. I'm not talking about you as Tennessee fans or those that see what Josh Heupel is doing up close and personal. But I think there are a lot of people that believe outside of individual programs, talking about a lot of national media, that Georgia's just going to take over. And they're going to go in this Alabama kind of run, and they're going to win 4, 5, 6 championships moving forward. Historically, that's not the case. It's not the case at all. If you look back, the greatest coach of his generation, in my opinion, in the SEC was Steve Spurrier. How many championships did he win?
One. Just one.
Right?
And he was lucky to get that one. Okay.
Vince Dooley. How many he was a great coach. He should have won more than one. He won 2. Won one. He should have won more than one. He won 1.
Pat Dye won 0.
What's that?
Pat Dye won 0, and he's a legendary coach.
Pat Dye won 0, legendary coach. So basically, who are we talking about? The coaches that really set up dynasties. We're talking about Paul Bear Bryant. We're talking about Nick Saban. Who else in terms? Woody Hayes. And when I say dynasty, I'm talking about long term. It's hard to do in college football to win 2 titles, which they've done. But it's even more difficult to keep that going for 3 titles. I believe if something's not changed quickly, that yes, the narrative shifts on Kirby Smart. What do we talk about now when we talk about Urban Meyer? We don't talk about the 2 national titles at Florida. We talk about the fact that those guys were a bunch of thugs, unless it's a propaganda piece by Netflix. So,
and Florida still hasn't recovered from that as a program. They really haven't.
Yes. And let me tell you how this works as a program to give you a little bit of insight. This is so cyclical because what happens is, especially when it's a former player, but what's going to happen with this Jarvis Jones thing and what happened at Tennessee, you come out, you get arrested. That's news, right? No question about it. Okay. Now you go to, let's say, an arraignment or a continuance or whatever. Well, that's news again because it's in the court system. So you report it again. So this one incident, maybe a 2-minute stupid decision in his life, can be front page news 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 times, depending on how it plays out with each step in the court process. Well, now you have Georgia with about 8 of those incidents going on. And if you don't think that parents look at that and think, man, they're in the news again, when in reality, it may just be, what's it been, 12 incidents? I've lost track, but it's been double-digit incidents. It could be in the paper on a regular basis. Big time problem for Georgia. And I'm telling you that I don't think this is anywhere close to corrected. And if it's not, it will be what erodes them as a program that could be an Alabama type dynasty, which I never thought that they could. And I don't think anybody can until I see it with my own eyeballs. I didn't think Alabama and Nick Saban could do what they did till they did it. I mean, there's no reason to think anybody else can do it moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. And let's not forget how lucky Nick Saban had to be. Okay, so 2009 he wins it, but 2011, if Oklahoma State doesn't blow a 17-point lead to Iowa State on a Friday night, LSU's playing Oklahoma State for the national title that year, not Alabama in a rematch. 2012, he lucked out on Ohio State just happening to be on probation when they were undefeated to get to play Notre Dame. And there's a lot of things that go in. I'll tell it. Look, the narrative on Georgia is about to get bad. Dave, I just talked about their issues on the last segment on Mike Bobo and Carson Beck, and I'm just not a believer. What happens if the offense, if they continue to look hideous? Fans are upset. You know this. Arrests become even bigger stories when you start struggling on the field. That people start talking about them a lot more. 2005 Tennessee, that all season, that's when the Fulmer Cup was created because there were like 21 arrests. I heard a lot more about those arrests after the 2005 season than I did before the 2005 season.
Yep. And the media by nature, the national media starts poking around when you're a bigger story because Georgia is going to get more clicks or views or reads if you want to go back to the 90s. And they're the national champion 2 times. So more people are going to be digging around into those things. And nowadays with social media, it goes viral. The only program I can think of that had elite success for a long amount of time, and there were a lot of not great dudes on that team, is Miami. And why is that? It's because Miami's local media was more concerned about covering the Dolphins. Miami's college football program, even when they were great, they were second to the Miami Dolphins as far as interest. I mean, if you've ever been in South Florida, that's apparently obvious.
And they ran a bad boy Pistons thing. We're like, yeah, we're thugs, and the rest of the college football world hates us. So we're going to take the college football world by firestorm and just piss everybody off. And that kind of made them marketable to the rest of the South Beach recruits.
Well, they appreciated it at that time. And, you know, I mean, it wasn't alcohol. The drug of choice was cocaine. So it fit right in. And I don't think anybody had a problem with people getting wild and on a football team. And I remember Ed Orgeron saying everybody celebrated Warren Sapp on Saturday, but nobody wanted to go get the M16 out of his dorm room on Monday. And he was serious. He said that to the Knoxville quarterback club. So it just kind of fit the tone of South Florida at the time.